Spring at Amesworth College unfolded in a riot of pastels and vibrant greens. Dogwood blossoms dotted the manicured lawns, and the scent of damp earth and new leaves hung in the air. Students emerged from the stone-faced halls, their laughter carrying on the mild breeze, a stark contrast to the reverent quiet of the classics department courtyard. Inside Professor Albright's lecture hall, the silence was of a different sort, thick with academic gravity until it was shattered by a muffled snicker. The professor, lost in his recitation, was oblivious to the caricature of a buck-toothed squirrel taped to the back of his tweed jacket with a sticky wad of gum. The world was a blur of sensation. A recent shower had left the air clean and crisp, smelling of soil and chlorophyll. Though there were no blossoms here, in this secluded patch of green, iridescent dragonflies hovered in the afternoon sun. A light wind stirred the leaves, sending a single drop of dew tumbling from a blade of grass to be swallowed by the earth. He stretched, a slow unfurling, and took in the courtyard that was both intimately known and utterly new. Felt strange. He seemed to have existed here for an eternity of seasons, yet this was the first time he had truly seen it. A monarch butterfly, its wings a stained glass window of orange and black, fluttered near him, its delicate legs tickling one of his small green leaves. The sensation was so novel it felt like laughter. A furious shout erupted from the nearby building, a sound so sharp it made him tremble. The butterfly darted away in a flash of color. He tried to see inside the lecture hall, craning his slender stem, but the windows were too high. Soon, two young men emerged. One looked thoroughly chastened, his shoulders slumped. The other, however, moved with a languid grace, entirely unbothered. Josh complained that the professor had given them detention, questioning where Ethan was going. Ethan scoffed, asking if he actually listened to the old traditionalist. He shook his head with a small smile and ambled toward the center of the courtyard. He was dressed in a simple pale blue shirt that, lacking any elaborate design, only accentuated the sharp, handsome lines of his face. The plant spirit held perfectly still as the young man drew closer, watched him settle on the grass nearby, and shielded his eyes to gaze up at the brilliant, cloudless sky. Just as a strange tension began to ease, the young man turned his head, a playful smirk on his lips, and his eyes locked onto him. Ethan remarked that he'd grown a few new leaves in the past few days. His fingers, warm and gentle, traced the edge of a small leaf, sending a tremor through the plant's entire being. After a moment, Ethan chuckled, withdrew his hand, and rejoined his friend. A moment later, Professor Albright appeared at the doorway, demanding to know if Ethan Vance and Josh Albright had learned their lesson. Josh mumbled an affirmative. From his spot in the grass, the spirit silently repeated the name over and over. Ethan Vance. By the time he focused his awareness again, the sun was high overhead. The professor finished his lecture, and the students spilled out of the hall, their voices animated. One suggested they all head to the conservatory, mentioning that the roses this year were supposedly spectacular. Another proposed the velvet rope instead. A few of them laughed with a knowing edge. Ethan just sipped from a water bottle, offering no argument. He then gestured dismissively toward the gardens, stating that if he wanted to see something beautiful, he could just look at this plant right here. His friends paused, then burst into laughter. They questioned how he could even call that scraggly thing a plant. It was just a bare stem with a few leaves. The spirit flinched, its leaves drooping slightly. It had only ever focused on drawing energy on existing. It had never considered its own form, never seen itself. Now it feared it was unsightly. Ethan corrected them, stating calmly that it was a rose. His friends were incredulous, pointing out how pathetic it looked. So thin and small, it seemed to be struggling for life. It was peak blooming season, and it didn't even have a single bud. They declared it wouldn't last much longer. Ethan ignored them, crouching down to gaze at the leaves with a gentle expression. Though the spirit knew Ethan couldn't see the consciousness hidden within, its core pulsed with a strange warmth. One of the friends grew impatient, reminding Ethan about the new headliner, Jade, who was debuting at the Velvet Rope that night. He warned that if they didn't get a good table soon, he'd regret it. Ethan stood up, a captivating smile spreading across his face that made the spirit's awareness stall. He sighed dramatically, lamenting how his friends wasted their youth in such sordid places. The spirit didn't grasp the full meaning, but it understood that the person they spoke of must be 1,000 times more beautiful than he. Looking around, at the lush grass, the strong trees, the vibrant insects, he felt like the plainest thing in the courtyard. A rose, he thought bleakly, could surely not look like this. In the following weeks, whenever Ethan visited the courtyard, his friends would tease him. They found it hilarious that he would ignore the prize-winning blooms in the conservatory for this flowerless twig. One joked that maybe it would turn into a handsome dryad, but given its frail state, it would probably be a mediocre one at best. Ethan would always reply that there was charm in everything, that beauty was subjective, and that he happened to like this one. The spirit yearned to grow faster, to sprout lush leaves and stunning blossoms like the roses across campus. It wanted, if for no other reason, to prove Ethan right. But no matter how much energy it drew from the sun and soil, its growth was agonizingly slow. Buds remained a distant dream. The season turned, the last of the flowers wilted, and summer began to settle its heavy heat over the campus. Its spiritual energy had grown, but its physical form was little changed. Ethan still came by, sometimes just to sit, sometimes to murmur a few words. Even on days when he was in a hurry, his gaze would linger on it for a moment before he moved on. This daily anticipation had become the center of its existence, this desire for a single glance. One afternoon, the sky turned a bruised purple and a fierce wind began to blow. A storm was coming. The professor, seeing the ominous clouds, dismissed class early. Students hurried out, pulling up hoods and opening umbrellas as they rushed for their dorms. He saw Ethan run from the building, but his gaze was fixed ahead, and he passed by without a glance. A hollow ache bloomed in the spirit's core, a feeling of profound loss. The rain came down in hard, stinging sheets. The wind howled, threatening to rip him from the earth. A powerful gust snapped one of his small branches clean off. A phantom sting of tears pricked at him, though he couldn't tell if it was from the pain or the heartbreak. The sky grew so dark it felt like midnight. He closed his awareness, shutting out the terrifying storm, focusing only on the memory of Ethan's smile, the sound of his voice. The memory was a small, warm anchor. Gradually, the brutal cold of the rain and the assault of the wind seemed to fade. Confused, he opened his senses again and was met with that familiar smile. Ethan's blue shirt was splattered with mud, and water dripped from the ends of his dark hair. A large, green golf umbrella was held firmly above him, shielding him from the relentless downpour. Ethan's voice was a low murmur as he asked if he wasn't being treated well. The spirit wanted to weep, nodding its leaves so vigorously that Ethan probably thought it was just the wind. Ethan's smile widened as he added that if it were a beautiful dryad, he might just ask it to repay him with its hand in marriage. Summer storms were fickle. Moments later, the clouds broke and the rain stopped. The sun reappeared, its golden light slanting through the trees, illuminating the lingering raindrops like scattered diamonds. Ethan grinned, remarking that it was finally over. He closed the umbrella, taking a deep breath of the rain-washed air, completely unaware of the tiny plant spirit behind him, its core glowing with a blush of heat as it pondered his words. The night air was cool and fresh after the rain. The campus was quiet, the only sounds the rustle of leaves and the chirp of crickets. He shook the last of the water from his leaves and focused his energy. After all this time cultivating his spirit, he was still trapped in this physical form. He couldn't speak, couldn't move. All he wanted was to be closer to Ethan, to be with him always, to escape this profound loneliness. A voice like tiny silver bells chimed near him, asking if he wanted to get out of there. He jolted, looking around frantically. A girl no bigger than a rose petal, dressed in shimmering yellow, stood on one of his branches, grinning at him. He asked who she was. She declared herself a fae. She explained that his power wasn't strong enough to leave his physical form, but meeting her was his lucky day. She then added that there was almost nothing she couldn't do. But the fae trailed off, eyeing him slyly. He urged her to speak freely, insisting that he would do anything to become human. She guessed correctly that it was for that young man. He hesitated for a moment, then gave a firm, resolute nod. She called him a romantic fool and posed a question. What would he do if the young man didn't like him back? His silent answer was a wave of quiet, desperate courage. The fae proposed a wager. If he could make Ethan fall in love with him before his first bloom, he would be free to live as a human forever. If not, the moment his flowers opened would be the moment he forgot everything. He would give her all his spiritual power and become nothing more than an ordinary plant, his consciousness erased. He agreed without hesitation. The fae gave him one final. Until the wager was won or lost, his plant body could not be moved, or his power would dissipate completely, and not even she could save him. He repeated the incantation she taught him, and in an instant, he was standing in the courtyard. His green leaves transformed into an emerald silk shirt that draped to the ground. Looking down, he had to stoop to see the tiny fae. He asked if she had known him before. The fae just laughed at his naivete. He murmured Ethan's name with a shy smile, which then faded. He admitted to the fae that he knew deceiving someone was wrong, but he just wanted to be near Ethan, to see him smile at him. The fae smiled back, a flicker of starlight in her hand, and said nothing. He thanked her. Though he was free from his plant form, he was too timid to reveal himself. He made himself invisible and spent his days following Ethan, a silent shadow. He would perch on the windowsill of the lecture hall, watching him study, or follow him back to his small cottage west of campus. He memorized every line of Ethan's handsome face, every expression. Ethan's cottage had no family or staff. He lived alone in the small but peaceful space. It was tastefully decorated but perpetually messy, as the homes of single young men often are. The little spirit, filled with a secret purpose, would wait until Ethan was out and use a touch of magic to banish the dust, careful not to disturb anything for fear of being discovered. Days passed much as they had before. He could only feel Ethan's warmth when Ethan himself was near his rosebush, and he lacked the courage to appear before him as a person. He knew he was a coward, but he reasoned that living with hope was better than facing rejection and having none at all. He was basking in the sun one afternoon when Professor Albright's enraged voice boomed from the classroom, nearly startling him off the windowsill. The professor was shouting about a lack of discipline, absolutely furious that Ethan Vance had brought alcohol to his lecture, and questioned if he even wanted to pass his final exams. Ethan's calm voice replied that it was his own homebrewed whiskey and invited the professor to try some. Seeing the professor's face turn an even deeper shade of red, Ethan just smiled and strolled out of the room before he could be reprimanded further. Noel, as he had started to call himself in his own mind, saw him coming and rushed back to his rosebush, settling into his plant form just in time. Ethan sat down beside him with a sound that was half laugh, half sigh. He mused aloud that this batch was a little too sweet, and that next time he'd have to make it a bit sharper. He asked the rosebush for its opinion. Though he couldn't taste it, Noel could smell the rich, peaty aroma, and the scent alone felt intoxicating. Ethan continued speaking, his voice softer now. He mentioned that he would be leaving for New York in a few months for his final fellowship interviews, and he probably wouldn't be there to see it bloom. He added quietly that perhaps he'd never see it. If he got the fellowship, he would stay in the city and not come back. A painful knot tightened in Noel's chest, so intense it felt like a physical blow. He would never see Ethan again. The thought had never occurred to him. He had only wanted to be near him, and now even that was becoming an impossibility. He had almost forgotten his pact with the Fae. Without Ethan's love, he would lose his own existence. He no longer remembered why he had started cultivating his spirit in the first place, but he knew that immortality without Ethan would be meaningless. Ethan gently dripped a few drops of the whiskey onto one of his leaves. As he smiled and asked if he'd be missed, the liquid traced a path down a vein, like a crystal tear. That night, a cool breeze rustled the willow trees. Noel knocked on the familiar door of the cottage, his body trembling slightly as he recited the lie he had practiced. He kept his head down, explaining in a quiet voice that he had been traveling with his grandfather, who had fallen ill and passed away. Now penniless, he asked if the young master would take him in. He promised he didn't need a salary, just a place to stay, and that he could work as a cleaner or an assistant. Ethan took his hand and led him inside. His palm was warm and strong, so different from Noel's own slender fingers. Noel's face flushed, a wave of sadness washing over him. He was certain this kindness was only because of the face the Fae had given him. He had never seen his own true form, but from the others' comments, he knew it was nothing special. Without this borrowed beauty, Ethan would surely have sent him away. In the morning, Noel woke with the dawn and quietly prepared a basin of warm water, waiting outside Ethan's bedroom. Hearing stirring inside, he gently pushed the door open. Ethan was standing by the bed, looking over at him with a smile. Noel's heart jumped. He set down the basin, wrung out a washcloth, and brought it to him. Although Ethan had never set any rules, Noel found a quiet joy in these small acts of service, a mixture of admiration and devotion. Ethan remarked on how thoughtful he was. Noel lowered his head, his heart pounding, unable to speak. After Ethan left for campus, Noel prepared lunch, packing it carefully and bringing it to him around noon. When he arrived, he heard one of Ethan's friends call out that his little beauty had arrived. Noel froze, mortified, until he saw Ethan emerge with a calm smile, taking his hand and leading him to the quiet courtyard. It was only when he was back on campus that Noel could be near his true self, and in those moments he felt a unique sense of peace. Ethan pointed to the rose bush, explaining that this was his rose. Noel was surprised and asked if he had planted it. Ethan replied that it had been there when he arrived, but no one else had ever paid it any attention. Noel then asked why he and he alone had been so good to it. Ethan countered, asking how he knew that. Noel explained that he had seen him visit it often these past few days, and assumed he must care for it. Ethan's answer was simple: because it's like me. Noel looked from himself to Ethan, utterly confused. He could find no resemblance between himself and this brilliant, charming, handsome man. Ethan nudged him, telling him to set out the food. Noel scrambled to arrange the containers and silverware, then knelt quietly to the side. Ethan offered him a bite, asking for his opinion. Before he could refuse, a fork was at his lips. He accepted the food. The taste was fresh and delicious. It was his own cooking, of course, but enhanced with a bit of magic. He felt a pang of guilt for the deception. He protested that it was Ethan's lunch, and that he couldn't possibly eat with him. Ethan's response was a playful threat, delivered in the gentlest of tones, that he enjoyed feeding him and didn't want his fun spoiled. Noel blushed and ate a few more bites until he truly couldn't manage anymore. A nature spirit didn't need to eat, but he took small bites occasionally so Ethan wouldn't become suspicious. Ethan commented that taking him in was a good deal. Noel said nothing, but his heart swelled with happiness. He did his best to be unobtrusive and useful, his only goal to make Ethan's life more comfortable. He cherished every word of praise, every casual comment. He hoped that each one meant he was earning a slightly larger place in Ethan's heart. The days grew hotter, but the skies were a brilliant, clear blue that made the world feel bright. On days like that, Ethan often skipped his lectures, claiming it was a shame to waste such perfect weather in a stuffy classroom. He would either stay home to sketch and read poetry, or ask Noel to pack a picnic for them to take to the countryside. One sweltering afternoon, after a light breakfast, Ethan decided to stay in, sitting lazily in an armchair with a cool drink. Noel was mixing ink at the desk, anticipating that Ethan would soon want to draw. When he turned, he nearly collided with Ethan's chest. Ethan asked if he knew how to write and offered to teach him. He placed his hand over Noelle's, guiding the slender fountain pen. His warm breath ghosted against Noelle's ear, making him shiver. He struggled to focus on the paper, on the shape of the letter they were forming, when Ethan's voice, a low murmur, drifted into his ear, wondering who could have made Noelle so beautiful. His hand jerked. He looked up quickly, his face so close to Ethan's that their lips almost brushed. He froze, trapped by the gentle intensity in Ethan's eyes. Ethan suggested they try again. Fire crept up Noelle's neck. He held his breath, his mind a complete blank as they finished the letter, with no memory of how it was formed. The kiss that followed felt entirely natural for Ethan, but for Noelle, it was a cataclysm that left his heart in a state of permanent upheaval. He didn't sleep that night. He lay in his small room, his fingers tracing his own lips, trying to hold onto the intoxicating memory. Moonlight filtered through the window. He tentatively touched his tongue to his lips where he had been kissed, then quickly drew it back, shocked and embarrassed by his own boldness. He had thought something fundamental had shifted between them, but in the following days, Ethan treated him just as before, with affection and closeness, but without crossing that line again. The bright bubble of his hope slowly deflated. He continued his duties, though he grew quieter, more reserved. He tried to hide his disappointment, to keep smiling until he was alone in the dark of his room. Sometimes Ethan would tell him not to bother with dinner. On those nights, he would return late, his clothes carrying the faint scent of perfume and wine. Noelle gradually understood where Ethan went and why he couldn't follow. He could only wait in the quiet cottage, watching the candle burn down. He remembered from his time as a plant that this was Ethan's way. Youthful and drawn to beauty in all its forms. It was human nature. It was why he'd needed a new face to begin with to catch his eye. He had told himself he understood, that he expected nothing. But as he waited night after night, the ache in his chest only grew sharper, a knot he couldn't untangle. He would close his eyes and replay that single, fleeting kiss until a faint smile touched his lips and his eyes filled with tears. The late summer nights grew cooler, a constant reminder that autumn was approaching. He sat on the porch steps, bathed in the soft moonlight, his eyes fixed on the road until the familiar figure appeared at the far end. He rushed to support the staggering man, biting his lip as he struggled to help him inside. The faint, pleasant scent of good whiskey clung to him. He was mumbling something. Noelle silently soaked a cloth and began to gently wipe his face. The handsome features, the elegant brow, the strong jaw. Only through the soft barrier of the cloth did his trembling fingers dare such a caress. A tear escaped and fell onto Ethan's cheek. Noelle gasped and reached to wipe it away. Ethan's eyes, which had been closed, snapped open. They were perfectly clear. Before Noelle could speak, his wrist was seized. He was pulled forward, tumbling into the bed, the canopy curtains fluttering down around them. He found himself lying on his back, eyes wide, unable to make out Ethan's expression in the dim light. It seemed he was smiling, yet his gaze was intense. His wrist was still held tight, but he knew that even if it weren't, he wouldn't pull away. Whatever Ethan wanted, he would give freely, even without a promise of love. Fingers traced his cheek, then slid down to deftly unbutton his shirt. He shivered and turned his head, unable to watch. Ethan's voice was a warm breath near his skin as he murmured that he smelled so good. The heat of his body was a breath away, a deliberate space that seemed designed to heighten Noelle's anticipation. His heart hammered against his ribs. He reached out with his free hand, his fingers desperately clutching Ethan's shirt. He was afraid, not of this, but of the moment it would end, when this intimacy would vanish. Finally, warm, soft lips met his skin, trailing a line of fire from his throat, over his chin, to his tightly pressed mouth. A wet tongue coaxed his lips apart, then gently, tenderly, licked at the teeth marks he'd left there, as if to soothe the hurt. He parted his lips with a soft sigh, and a slick, warm presence immediately slipped inside, tangling with his own tongue in a slow, deep kiss. His thin summer shirt was already in disarray, pushed down his arms to bare his shoulders. He didn't know when it happened, but he was now completely entangled with Ethan. Their hot skin pressed together, the embarrassing, needy parts of their bodies flush against each other. Ethan shifted his hips with a deliberate slowness. A sheen of sweat broke out on Noel's skin, and his face burned. Ethan's hand easily found and enclosed him, his thumb stroking with a knowing rhythm. Noel trembled, his eyes growing misty, and with a small cry, he arched into Ethan's hand, shame and pleasure warring within him. He had never done such a thing, not even by himself. He was terrified Ethan would find him disgusting and push him away. Ethan's voice was a low chuckle in his ear. He mused that it was Noel's first time, noting that it was surprisingly sweet, with a hint of flowers. He then whispered that it would be even better with a little something extra. Noel's face was scarlet as his body was shifted, and Ethan settled over him. There was pain, but also a deep, spreading warmth. The heat radiated from where they were joined, a feeling of being stretched, then filled. All he could do was cling to Ethan's arms, his body moving in rhythm with the other man's. But inside he was joyous. So joyous he could ignore the sting of his first time. So joyous he could lose himself completely in this act of uncertain affection. Ethan's voice was a breath against his ear, murmuring his name. Noel, Noel. He tentatively flickered his tongue out in response and was immediately captured in another deep, languid kiss. His body was boneless, but Ethan held him tight, each thrust deeper than the last. The sensations were completely different now, building to an unbearable, singular point. His skin was slick with sweat. He felt as if he might melt. He wondered if this was what it would be like when he lost his powers, his consciousness. If so, he would rather it end like this, in Ethan's arms with no regrets. A final tremor racked his body, and he went limp. He felt untethered, floating. He heard a low groan beside his ear, felt a final, deep pulse as warmth flooded into him. Through the haze, he thought he heard a whisper, "You're mine." Before he could process it, he fell into a deep sleep. He always woke at the first chirp of birdsong, and this morning was no different. He opened his eyes. The sky was just beginning to lighten. The man behind him was still asleep, one arm draped across his chest, his fingers idly brushing against his nipple. A blush crept up his neck. He tried to shift, but his body ached. He knew he should be getting water for Ethan to wash, but as he started to sit up, an arm tightened around him, pulling him back down. Ethan's sleepy voice told him he wasn't going to class today, and that he should sleep a little more. Noel lay back down, but sleep was impossible. He could feel the warmth of Ethan's breath on his neck, sending his thoughts spiraling back to the night before. He carefully turned his head to look at the handsome face beside him, holding his breath, memorizing the sweep of his lashes, the curve of his lips. A moment later, the corners of Ethan's mouth turned up, and he let out a soft laugh. He asked if he was really that good-looking. Noel yelped and flipped over, burying his face in the pillow. Ethan laughed again, pressing soft kisses to his bare back. He knew Ethan was genuinely kind to him. He saw how other wealthy students treated their staff, with yelling and punishments. He, by contrast, lived a life of ease, simply helping with chores and preparing ink. Ethan would sometimes teach him to write, and though a spirit had no need for such a skill, Noel loved the feeling of their hands clasped together, and he applied himself diligently. After every lesson, Ethan would lean in and press a soft kiss to his lips before ruffling his hair. Autumn approached, bringing with it a cool wind. When he opened the window in the morning, the chill made him shiver, and his heart would sink a little lower. The date of the fellowship interviews was drawing near. A jacket was draped over his shoulders from behind, and he leaned back into the warm chest that enclosed him. Since that night, he had moved into Ethan's room. They were not intimate every night, but every moment of closeness felt precious. He found himself wondering if he'd been too much trouble earlier. He shook his head and looked up at the full moon, a silver coin in the dark sky. When this moon next appeared, he wondered if he would still have this person beside him. A sharp pain lanced through him. He turned his head slightly, hiding his expression. He had fallen so far, so fast. The deeper he fell, the more it hurt. The affection and tenderness were real, but that didn't mean it was love. He wanted a lifetime, an eternity. Could Ethan ever offer him that? The day of departure arrived. The Fae had been clear. His plant body could not move. If he went too far from it, he wouldn't have enough energy to maintain his human form. He and Ethan would be separated. Before Ethan left, even the stern Professor Albright was emotional, gripping his star pupil's hands and offering earnest advice. He told him to conduct himself well. Ethan thanked him sincerely. Noelle watched from the side until the small group dispersed. Ethan came over, took his hand, and led him into the courtyard. His rosebush self was lusher now, the green of its leaves deeper. Ethan asked him to take good care of it while he was gone. Noelle nodded silently, fighting back the tears that burned behind his eyes. When the flower blooms, he will forget. Where would Ethan be then? After a moment of silence, Ethan leaned in close, his lips brushing Noelle's ear as he whispered 3 words, clear as a vow. Wait for me. The autumn wind stripped the trees bare. The new students at the college were a rowdy bunch, and the professor's ruler could often be heard rapping against a desk. But no one ever strolled from that lecture hall with Ethan's easy confidence. The wind now had a sharp bite to it. He shivered his leaves and closed his awareness. After Ethan left, he rarely took human form. At first, he stayed in the cottage, breathing in the lingering scent of him, reliving memories of sunny afternoons and moonlit nights. But he soon realized that without Ethan, the cottage was just an empty space. He couldn't bear to stay there, afraid the loneliness would make him cry. He still returned every few days to clean, because Ethan had asked him to wait. He couldn't let him return to a house shrouded in dust. He imagined Ethan's voice teasing him for being lazy in his absence. Would that day ever come? He believed it would. A few weeks later, news arrived from the city. 2 students from their county had passed the preliminary exams. Ethan, of course, was one of them. It was customary for successful candidates to stay in the city to prepare for the final rounds the following spring. Noelle felt a mix of joy and desolation, unsure if his happiness for Ethan outweighed his sadness at the prolonged separation. He spent the entire day in turmoil. That night, the small, white orb of the Fae appeared beside him. He greeted her with a surprising amount of warmth, like seeing a family member. She remarked that he was just as foolish as ever. He lowered his leaves, unsure what she meant but feeling that she was right. The Fae, cracking open a sunflower seed she'd produced from nowhere, teased him. She asked what he would do if Ethan forgot him, if he found someone else. She complained that she didn't want to go to all this trouble for just a few months' worth of power. He nodded, thinking that he owed it to her not to let her down. The days of focused cultivation passed in a blur, without regard for sun or snow. When he next opened his awareness, the ice had thawed, and the world was green again. The winter he had dreaded had passed in the blink of an eye. The campus was alive again. A new flock of students crowded the conservatory, leaving Professor Albright to shake his head in the empty courtyard. Everything was the same and yet different. There were new golden carp in the pond. The railings had been repaired and repainted. He felt that he, too, had grown taller, his leaves more plentiful, but still there was no sign of a bud. He began to wonder if he was even a rose at all. Perhaps it had all been a joke. The thought was immediately followed by a wave of self-loathing. If he couldn't even trust Ethan on this, how could he trust that he would return? He had to believe. Every word, every touch, was etched into his soul. A few days later, the messenger arrived. The final results were in. It was said that despite his playful nature, Ethan Vance had passed with honors. He had apparently been at the top of his class during the main exams, only to be narrowly beaten in the final interview. The townspeople gossiped that if he had applied himself, he could have easily been the valedictorian. Noel didn't understand all the titles, but he knew Ethan had succeeded. A quiet joy bloomed within him. He cleaned the cottage meticulously and began to spend his days watching the main road into town. He didn't see Ethan, but he did encounter some of his old friends, drinking and talking in a pavilion nearby. He made himself invisible, not wanting to endure their mockery. As he passed, their words caught his attention. They were celebrating Ethan's success, saying he had finally redeemed his family's honor. One recounted how after Ethan's father died and the family fortune was lost, his prospective father-in-law had not only offered no help but had broken off a long-standing engagement, declaring he would only allow his daughter to marry Ethan if he made something of himself. It was because of this humiliation, they said, that Ethan had left the city and come to Amesworth. Apparently, the moment the wealthy family heard he had succeeded, they threw a lavish party in his honor. They speculated on whether the engagement was back on. To get ahead in politics, one needed powerful connections. Even if Ethan despised the family, he would be a fool not to use them. Besides, the daughter, Elaine, was said to be a legendary beauty. A man like Ethan wouldn't be able to resist. Another friend commented that Ethan had been unusually focused this past year, guessing it was all for the exams. Now that he had what he wanted, he would likely revert to his old ways. Noel listened, his mind going numb. So that was why Ethan had worked so hard. And now he was getting married? If that was true, he wouldn't be coming back. He would never come back. Those words, "wait for me," had been just a casual remark, and he had foolishly clung to them as truth. He wrapped his stems around himself, a phantom cold spreading through him as silent tears began to fall. He really wasn't going to see him again. He drifted through the next day in a stupor, only to be jolted awake by the sound of celebratory music and cheering. The town was welcoming its hero. He heard Ethan's name shouted over and over. Someone mentioned that he had returned with a beautiful woman by his side, and that wedding bells were surely imminent. Noel froze, then retreated deep into his own consciousness. It was better to stay here, never to see them together, than to witness Ethan smiling at another woman. In his heart, he could preserve the memory of an Ethan who smiled only for him. It was a lie, but it was all he had left before the bloom, the forgetting, the end. He wondered if, in another life, they might meet again. The noise outside eventually faded. After a while, he heard a woman's gentle voice approaching. She was asking if this was the college where he had studied. He stiffened. Then he heard a soft laugh. The sound was so familiar it stole his breath. He watched, paralyzed, as they walked toward the courtyard. Ethan looked the same, his features sharp and handsome, his bearing relaxed and confident. The crowd was gone. It was just the two of them, a perfect picture of elegance and grace. The sun was setting, and the campus was quiet. Professor Albright emerged from his office, did a double take, and then beamed as Ethan hurried over to greet him with a respectful bow. The old man's eyes grew misty. Noel watched until Ethan and the professor parted ways. The woman was looking around, praising the peaceful atmosphere. He felt Ethan's gaze sweep toward him and quickly lowered his own, then remembered that Ethan couldn't see him. He didn't know if he felt relief or disappointment. The woman pointed directly at him, her voice bright with curiosity as she asked what kind of plant it was. She took a step closer. He wanted to shrink away, to disappear, but in a moment they were both standing before him. Ethan's voice was clear and familiar, a sound that resonated deep within him. He called it a rose. He felt a faint tremor run through him, just from the proximity of Ethan's voice. He had thought they would never meet again, and yet here they were, so close. The woman remarked that while it couldn't compare to the roses in the grand city gardens, it had a quiet, elegant beauty that made the others seem almost garish. She reached out a slender, manicured hand to touch his leaves. He instinctively tried to pull back, but his physical form was immobile. As her fingers were about to make contact, he squeezed his eyes shut, a wave of bitter sadness washing over him. He waited, but felt nothing. He opened his eyes to see Ethan stepping forward, gently taking the woman's hand in his own. He smiled at her, suggesting that she must be tired after such a long day, and that perhaps they should head back for dinner. A blush colored the woman's cheeks. She nodded, and they left together. Noel watched them go, his heart a placid, empty vessel. Even the sadness was gone, replaced by a profound stillness. When the moon was high, he stood before the cottage. The windows were lit, casting a warm, inviting glow. He reached out and touched the thin window pane, leaving his hand there until his cold fingertips absorbed some of the warmth. He let his hand fall. Back in the courtyard, he materialized a sheet of paper. He hesitated, then began to write, his tears falling faster than the ink. Midnight, the college courtyard. He folded the unsigned note, placed it at the cottage door, and after a long moment, knocked once before disappearing into the night. If Ethan recognized his handwriting, perhaps he would come. The shadows of the trees danced in the warm breeze. He had never known why he cultivated his spirit, but now he thought it was simply for this: to walk the earth for a short time, to meet one person, to feel love, and to have his heart broken by it. He didn't blame Ethan. He didn't regret their brief, dreamlike time together. Love itself was not a mistake. He had known happiness, hadn't he? Ethan had given him joy, even if he couldn't give him a lifetime. And so, their time together was over. It had been a foolish fantasy. A small spirit could never truly be with a human, especially not two men. He was still grateful. Grateful for the tenderness, for the affection. That name, he would not forget. He would not forget Ethan whispering in his ear, "You're mine." He remembered every word, from their meeting to their parting. He remembered how Ethan had hoped for his rose to bloom, how he had cared for it from its first fragile leaf. To bloom is to forget. Either way, it was time. He stood waiting, quietly gathering his energy, his long lashes wet with tears, a faint smile on his lips. He heard the soft crunch of footsteps outside the courtyard. The sound was painfully familiar. It was the same sound that had heralded Ethan's arrival that first day. Then the world had been green and gold, full of promise. And now, he closed his eyes and pushed his life force outward. If they could not be together, he would at least fulfill Ethan's one wish for him. He had never truly understood Ethan's heart, but he remembered this one thing. He knew he was not ready to bloom, that it should have taken years more. But without a reason to live, why linger in this world? By then, Ethan might have forgotten this rosebush entirely. Who would be there to see the flowers? From the very beginning, only one person in the whole world had cared for him, cherished him. Even if it was fleeting, it was deeply engraved in his soul. To trade his existence for this one moment of blooming was worth it. Something small and hard pushed its way out of his stems. One, then another. He watched the astonishment on Ethan's face and felt a faint glimmer of joy. It was the same expression he'd worn the first time Noel had appeared to him in human form, though that time it had quickly been replaced by a handsome smile. In an instant, the tight green buds swelled, smooth and perfect as jade. His vision blurred. It was like that rainy day, his sight obscured by rain and tears, as he watched Ethan approach with that green umbrella, his smile a beacon. "If you were a beautiful dryad, I might just ask you to repay me with your hand in marriage." The jade-green sepals slowly peeled back, revealing the tightly furled petals within. It was here, in this courtyard, that Ethan had fed him a bite of his own lunch, his domineering words softened by a gentle tone. The soft kiss while teaching him to write, the sweet nothings whispered during their lovemaking. There was so much more, but it was fading. No matter how hard he tried to hold on, his mind was becoming a vast, empty space. Sweat beaded on his brow. The world swam in and out of focus. Was he really losing himself? He could hear the soft, whispering sound of petals unfurling. He looked at the man before him one last time. So beautiful, so very beautiful. But who was he? A tearing pain seized his heart, and he could only close his eyes in surrender. Wait for me. Before the last wisp of consciousness dissolved, that voice echoed in his mind, a persistent, lingering refrain. Someone had said that to him once. He had waited, and he had lost. He was floating in a gray, formless void. In the mist, he saw a familiar figure in a pale blue shirt, fading, about to disappear. A desperate panic seized him. He lunged forward, his fingers closing around the fabric of the man's shirt. "Ethan!" He screamed, the sound tearing from his throat, the sound of something clattering to the floor. His chest heaved as his breathing steadied. He sighed, sweat trickling down his temple. He raised a hand to wipe it away, but a soft, silken cloth touched his forehead first. He flinched and turned his head. A man was sitting on the edge of the bed, a wry smile on his lips as he dabbed the sweat from his brow. The face was a masterpiece of handsome lines and knowing eyes. Noel stared, then reached out a trembling hand to touch. The cheek was warm, solid. It didn't vanish. He still said nothing, his fingers tracing the man's brow, his nose, his lips. The man's smile widened, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He observed that Noel had been calling his name in his sleep, yet now seemed not to recognize him. A lump formed in Noel's throat. Why was he here? Why hadn't he forgotten? Ethan watched him, his expression one of amused patience, as if waiting for Noel to throw himself into his arms as he once had. Noel bit his lip and swung his legs out of bed, only then realizing he was wearing only his underclothes. Ethan's voice was a low murmur, a spell that rooted him to the spot. He asked if Noel was angry with him. Noel shook his head, unable to speak. His hand, resting on the mattress, was suddenly enclosed in a warm grip. Ethan moved behind him, wrapping his arms around his waist and pulling him into an embrace. "I'm back," he whispered. Hot tears finally broke free. Noel bit his lip hard, but his body shook with silent sobs. But his unmarried wife had returned with him, hadn't she? Ethan seemed to read his mind. He explained that Elaine was just like a sister to him, guessing that this was what Noel had been agonizing over. Noel remained silent. Ethan confirmed that the backstory was true. The engagement had been real. But he insisted that he hadn't sought the fellowship for fame or fortune, or to marry Elaine. It was simply a matter of pride, for his family and for himself. He wanted Elaine's father to know that if he, Ethan Vance, wanted to ruin their family, he had the power to do so, but he wouldn't stoop to their level. A simple honors degree had been enough to make the old man ecstatic. He confessed that if it hadn't been for Noel, he might have aimed for the top prize. He hated academia, so why would he ever want a life of political maneuvering and backstabbing? He said he could never subject Noel to that kind of misery. A man with his qualifications could get a quiet county position, feign illness after a few years, and retire to the countryside with him, perfectly content. Noel finally found his voice, asking why the young lady had come with him. Ethan explained that he and Elaine had grown up together and were like siblings. She had wanted to see the area, and he couldn't very well refuse her. He didn't know where Noel had heard those rumors, but he knew that after a long and difficult journey from the city, he had come home to find his little love had vanished. Then a mysterious note appeared, summoning him for a midnight viewing of a blooming rose, only for him to arrive and find Noel collapsed on the ground, pale as death. Noel shook his head over and over, then turned and buried his face in Ethan's chest, his heart aching with a mixture of sorrow and overwhelming joy. He had won the wager long before the flower bloomed. He had just been too lost in his own insecurity to see it. He had told himself to trust Ethan, but deep down, a seed of doubt had remained. His tears soaked Ethan's shirt as he clung to the solid warmth of his chest. Ethan held him close, his voice soft but firm. He told Noelle that from now on, whatever he was thinking, he had to say it. No more secrets. Noelle nodded obediently, then froze. Ethan's voice was a low, amused rumble against his ear. He asked when he had figured it out. Noelle couldn't tell him that he wasn't human, just a small nature spirit who had fallen in love with the mortal world because he had fallen in love with a man. He couldn't tell him that his true form was unremarkable, that he had used magic to become beautiful because he knew Ethan liked beautiful things. There was still so much he couldn't say. He would have to build his courage bit by bit and let Ethan understand him slowly. And if, after all that, Ethan still didn't reject him, then wouldn't he be the happiest spirit in all the world? Ethan's voice was a teasing whisper. "Finally ready to talk?" he asked. Before Noelle could answer, he was pulled back into the bed and thoroughly, lovingly worshipped. As he drifted off to sleep, wrapped in Ethan's arms, he wondered just how long he had known. Perhaps only the spring wind had the answer to that.